So it's some of the simple things that really feel good, you know, about having a new roof on this place. Before, it leaked in so many places, I had to put plastic over my lights just to keep them from getting ruined. And when this wall was out, that plastic would sometimes blow off and you wouldn't notice it, and it would, you know, leak on the lights, because there is no place in here that's 4 foot square or 2 foot square like these lights that didn't leak on occasion. You know, it may not pour water, but it would drip, right? And I damaged multiple lights, you know, trying to, you know, just be able to see and hear and work. And it feels good not to be going backwards now. I can actually take the plastic off the lights. Woo-wee! No thank you. So here's a look at some of the brackets that I used to tie that temporary support wall that's now all the way down to the bottoms of the trusses, and then the temporary support wall was obviously chained to the floor. Kept the roof from blowing off during the windy season. And looking at these, I was thinking, you know, that's one of those things that you're just really likely to overlook when you're budgeting for a project. Each one of these is not very expensive, so you just disregard its expense altogether. But let's say they're $2 a piece. You know, you get, by the time you buy a bunch of them, you know, that's a chunk of change, right? So my dad always says, figure out what a project is going to cost you, what you think it's going to cost, then double that, and you're probably safe. In reality, it's probably less than that, probably more like 25% extra, but you get the idea. One of those unexpected expenses, or, you know, unthought of, right, that you run into in a project, especially a rebuild. So if you're doing a job that involves treated lumber, make sure your fasteners are approved for treated lumber, because that is corrosive, right? These are what I use to tie the temporary support wall to the brackets, and you can see that just over the last 6 months, you know, these have already started corroding pretty heavily. So wouldn't be long, especially outside, and those would just rot in too. So when I tore this wall down originally, I just took the outlets that were on the, you know, interior of this wall, because it was all block, right? You wasn't running wires through that. Took them all, strapped them up to the truss, and then I figured when the time come, I would just fold them down and put them pretty much where I want them. Now, obviously, I didn't run any electrical wires through this wall, because I always planned just to fold these down and put them right back on the interior of the wall. Now that doesn't look quite as clean or as finished as them being recessed into the wall. But having them this way allows me to move them, right? Add a circuit, take out a circuit, you know, it's easy that way. So maybe not quite as clean as install as if they were in the wall, but you know, much more user-friendly and adaptable. So it's always a good idea to label the circuits. Makes it easy when you go to change something. And the audible beep on these are nice. You go over, flip the breaker, you know when it's off, right? There we go. It's off. This one should be hot, I think. Yeah. Still hot. That's circuit 11. That's a 220 outlet there. 220 single phase. So I can already tell you that I'm going to want some extra outlets on this wall. Originally, we have 3 on this long wall that were in the building when it was built, but there is room in the breaker box, so I'll be adding some more of these in the future depending on, you know, where I locate everything. But I chose to mount these 37 inches off the top of the new pad. The workbench that I'm thinking of putting over here is around 36, so this should be just slightly above the top of that. And I took all that into account when I set the height of these windows as well, right? I didn't want this to be way below, you know, a workbench, nor way above a bench that I would use anyway. And it just all worked out to where once the floor's in here, I'll be eye level with about the center of this large window, which is nice. So that's a really good thing about these external, right? Add them, take them away, move them. Good for a shop, for sure. So these end wall outlets, this is the front of the shop and the back is mirrored, right? Same thing. I'm going to be mounting these about mid-torso level, about where they were originally actually, because I can't mount it lower because there's no extra wire. But you get the idea. I don't know what's going in this corner, so I don't know where to mount this actually. And for just general, I think of mid-torso, right? You just reach out, plug it in without, you know, all that extra nonsense. I'm going to be mounting this to the wall using these Tapcon anchors that are way too big for this, but they're all I have that will actually work, and I can remove these 10 years from now and replace it with the proper sized anchor if I choose. But for now, they'll work. And we're going to mount it right there. So see that block right there with that line across it? That came originally from down about this level, and it was flipped around 180 degrees because a chain link on that door would drag down the length of this wall on the outside. I just noticed that. Not that it matters, right? But I thought that was neat that it ended up almost in the same spot that it started from. million ladybugs in there. So let's take a quick look at the hearing protection that I've been using around here. I've been using these Howard Light L3s for quite some time. Really big and comfortable, and they work, right? There's nothing to go wrong with these things. I recently picked up this set of Walker Razor electronic earmuffs because they were slimmer, right? And I wanted to try the auto dampening of the electronic version. And what I found is that they work really good. As long as they have batteries, they work really good. The problem with these, well, it's probably more of a problem with me, is that I never turn them off and they're always dead. They do not have an auto off function, probably for, legal reasons, I'm sure, but you get the idea. These are great if you're working with a coworker and you don't want to scream at each other. These work really well. They actually enhance noise levels, and you can hear better with them on than you can with them off. These, you can't hear a thing. If you're working with somebody else, you're screaming at each other, but these work. So they're the ones that I always use because these are always dead. So a little behind the scenes footage here. This is the camera that I normally shoot all my video on. If you watch, the majority of clips that I shoot come out of this camera right here, which is a Canon T6i with a Rode Pro Plus mic, and for the shotgun, right, when I'm up close. But when I'm at distance, I use this here. This is the Rode Link. This is the receiver. I wear the transmitter, right? So here's a look at the camera. And this thing has literally tens of thousands of individual video clips on it. Thousands and thousands and thousands of photos. And it is dying, unfortunately. So I have to replace it. Now, last year I tore the screen, this flip screen, completely off of this thing. It fell over on the tripod and I had to replace all that. And now the SD card slot in this thing's dying. Those are all parts that you can replace, right? These are repairable cameras, but once you've used one as much as I've used this, it's like an old car. What's next, right? Once you fix one thing, you're on to the next. And I have to have a reliable camera. So I've decided I'm upgrading from the T6i to the 90D. And I'm hoping that this one will last till that 90D comes in, because it is hit or miss whether you turn it on and it sees the video card or not. No matter how you jiggle it, right? It just, it's dying. And it's already eaten two video cards, two SD cards in the last 2 weeks. So could just be the video cards or the audio SD cards died. But it's kind of odd that this thing's acting funny in the SD slot. And then, I'm losing cards. So can't afford to lose footage. It's hard enough to make it. So for me, Christmas gift is going to be a camera, which is also a Christmas gift to you guys. Hopefully the audio will improve and hopefully the video will improve, because the camera that I'm getting is better than this as far as control over its features, that's for sure. So we'll see. I'm kind of excited to get it, I guess, but it'll get roughed up just like this one has. So it's a little overcast today. The temperature is unseasonably warm. It's about 55 or maybe even 65 degrees Fahrenheit. But last week it was like 25 degrees. So it's just a roller coaster here. And there's a common saying around here, and that is, if you don't like the weather, just wait. 15, 20 minutes, it's likely to change. And that is so true. Because last week we got our first snow of the year. We don't get a lot of snow around here, but we got enough to show, and I'll put in some clips of that. It was really beautiful. But it's just crazy how the weather is just up and down in the mid-eastern U.S. It's a beautiful day today, though. Could rain, but at least it's warm.
Slightly growing within me, like a thunder breaks a tree. Oh my, makes me crazy. My body hates and my mind's lazy. My head feels weird, I'm feeling numb. I should stop waiting for you scared when you're not around, 'cause we have these special bonds. And I know how it is like to be alone without you. So I'm just waiting for the strike, tear my insides into.
Oh, I know. I missed you too. I've been gone so long. Go play, little guy. So obviously this outlet's going to have to be moved. It can't stay right in front of the window, and I want to move it over here to the right, more towards the center of the shop. And in the future, I want to change the way that this is all wired up, because all three of these outlets here are all circuit number 2, all on the same 20 amp breaker. So, you know, if you're using a lot of devices on these outlets, you're likely to blow a breaker. In fact, I'd like to have maybe a breaker for one side and a breaker for the other, you know, to give me a little more load capacity there. Because what happens is the wire runs out of the breaker box, the 20 amp circuit runs into the first outlet there, then chains right out of it, comes into this one, back out, and into the other one. So really you've only got a 20 amp max capacity load on all three of these outlets. So that could be a problem, but you know, we're not going to address that now. We're just going to change this out, move it, and then maybe add a new circuit in the future, maybe a couple of them. So all I'm doing here is extending the wire in between these two outlets to give me enough room to where I can slide this outlet over from in front of the window, over to the right. And what I did was attach my new wire to the old wire to use it to pull through the conduit instead of a wire snake. And this extra length of wire will allow me to go over to the right, out from in front of the window. And I probably shouldn't have done that, because now I'm going to have to pull that through this a long way. There we go, it'll work. Watch this. It's amazing that I can actually walk up to the wall and plug something in now. other than the back wall, it's complete. So that's good. All the outlets are now installed. The only thing that I need to do is get a couple fasteners on each one of these pieces of conduit, you know, to keep them nice and straight. And that's it. It's good. Really good. So check out the little whitetail doe over here on the hillside. She's just hanging out, eating acorns, I guess. You see her right over there? She's just doing her thing. They come around here all the time and eat. They see me out here quite often and don't pay a lot of attention to me. So I decided I'd film myself getting in just a little bit of practice welding aluminum, which is not something that I do a whole lot. Not at, I weld daily, TIG weld daily at my normal job, but you know, usually it's stainless and carbon steel, not so much aluminum. Some exotics on occasion, but aluminum is not something we work with a lot. So on the occasion that I'm handed the aluminum job, I like to at least have a little bit of practice in from time to time, and that's what I'm doing here. Also trying a new cup. Now I've used this cup with stainless and carbon steel, but you know, never tried it with aluminum, and it is a CK Worldwide. Well, here's the package for the 1/8 inch tungsten, which is what I like to run if I can, simply because you know, it seems to hold up better, especially at the higher amperages. So this is pure tungsten, indicated by the green paint on the end. It just balls up well with AC welding, good stable arc. Just my go-to tungsten when I'm trying to weld aluminum. Now, I know a lot of welders, and some of them will just refuse to weld aluminum. They hear that it's hard, they try once and fail, and then they just give up on it. And really, it's a different animal, very different than carbon steel, because of the way that it acts once it gets hot, and throughout the welding process it changes because it absorbs so much heat and requires less heat the longer you weld on the one piece. But other than those few differences, it needs to be clean as well. It's really not that hard. I'm not a professional at it by any stretch, but if I can weld aluminum, so can anybody else that's decent running a TIG torch. So this little air-powered belt sander here was a recent acquisition at our work, and they're nice. They're good for deburring and stuff, but they definitely do not replace a 4.5 inch angle grinder when it comes to welding work. They're more for final part deburring and stuff like that. I use it often to clean up small stuff that needs welded, but other than that, they're almost useless for anything heavy duty. So one thing that I've noticed about welding aluminum is that you can start off pretty hot. You know, and obviously this is dependent upon the size of the part that you're welding, the length of the weld, and a lot of other things. But you know, you start off hot and you slowly back off by the time you get to the other side of the part, especially if it's a small part, because it gets so saturated with heat. You know, it just takes less heat because it's aluminum. You know, and to achieve the same thing, right? So by the time you get to the end of the weld, you may have backed off of the amperage by 30% or so, just to avoid a melt out on the end of the weld, especially when you reach the edges of the part. This is not a good shot of the welding process. Got my GoPro behind the welding hood here. But so here I'm attempting to weld two different thicknesses of aluminum together. One's probably a 1/16, I'm guessing. One's a little less than an 1/8. I'm not for sure exactly how thick they are, but neither one are all that thick. And the way that I do this is just the way that I would do it with carbon steel or stainless steel, and that is focus a large portion of the heat onto the thicker part, and just kind of, you know, wave the torch over towards the thinner part, even using my filler rod to feed onto the thinner part, just in an attempt to cool it down a little bit, while also welding on this chill block, which is just a big chunk of aluminum, right? I noticed that with this clear lens that I also have to darken my helmet by a shade or so. It's nice. I mean, it helps you see a little better, but they're definitely brighter. So I TIG weld a lot, but I don't TIG weld aluminum a lot. And if you can run a TIG torch, you can weld aluminum. You gotta have the machine that'll do it, right? But it doesn't take a rocket surgeon or a brain scientist to figure it out. There are a few differences, but you know, it's not that scary metal that everybody seems to make it out to be. So I took some 9mm plastic and I've spread it along the block wall, and all this is for is to protect the block work from being splashed by the concrete when it comes in here. Because if you get concrete splashed up on block work and you don't get it off in a very short amount of time, it's pretty much there forever. So we are protecting our block work with some plastic. This is the same stuff that I used for my vapor barrier under here, and all I did was staple that to the wooden sill plate. Now I still got to attach that to the front and the back wall. I'll show you how I'm going to do that, because there's nothing to attach to, right? And you can't tape anything to block work. It just won't stay. So we got to fasten this plastic up in the front and the back to protect this block work. Now I should already have concrete in here. I should actually be, right now, drinking coffee, admiring my nice finish, contemplating how I'm going to move everything over and lay everything out. But unfortunately, due to weather, this just couldn't happen this week. It was supposed to, and it still could have, but my contractor, he called me, he said, it's up to you. We can pour this and dump a bunch of artificial heat in here with heaters, or you can wait a few days because the weather is supposed to improve and we're supposed to have overnight temperatures that are not below freezing and get a better job. So I suggested we wait, right, and get a better job, and he explained it to me as to why it would be better. The first night, that you pour concrete, as I was told, the reaction that takes place in the concrete is plenty enough to hold it over, right? It's not in danger of freezing that first night, but the second and the third night is when the reaction slows down, the pad slows down or cools down, it still has moisture in it, and then when water freezes, it expands. So, it's just cheaper and better if we wait. So that's what we decided to do, wait a few days. I've waited this long, and I can wait a few more days. So that was a good suggestion of his. Now, I chose this contractor because he showed up. He gave me a good price, not the best price that I got on this job, but a really good price, and he really took the time to go over his plan of attack, what he, his order of operations to get concrete in here and try to give me the best job that he can, and I really appreciated that. He knows what he's doing. This guy's no amateur like me. He also made a really simple and beautiful suggestion on how he would have formed this concrete up in the front, right? I got a big deviation here that, I put a strip of metal on. We'll go over that in just a second. I'll tell you what he suggested, which is something I wish I would have thought of to fix this. But first, let's get this plastic up on the front and the back, and then we'll discuss this. So a lot of you will remember me installing this piece of 1/8" sheet metal along the transition between the old pad and the new pad, and all this was, or is a concrete form, right? When we pour concrete in here on the new side, I want this pad to be nice and level because this old pad slopes downhill from the middle of the shop quite heavily towards the end, about 3 inches. I didn't want that in the new pad, so I built a form to address, to try to address that, right? And it was quite a bit of work. I probably at least a couple hours, I would say, building this. And when my contractor that's going to do this job came and looked at this, he was a bit concerned. He was concerned that when it comes time to remove this, that it would potentially damage the top edge of the concrete, and he didn't want that. He said it would probably work fine. He said, but just the risk is high of damaging your new work when it comes time to pull this out. So what he suggested, and what I thought was a great suggestion, and what separates the guys that do this every day from the guys that don't, and that is they have experience in situations similar to this. And he suggested that we Tapcon or concrete anchor a 2x4, long 2x4 to the top of the new or old pad, fasten a 2x4 on its side onto that, and then shoot it with a laser to get the right height, cut it, and there you go. When it comes time to remove that form, the wooden one, it's not stuck down in between the old pad and the new pad. It'll pop off really easy. The risk of damage is much less. And plus, originally it would have been a lot less work to build something like that, a lot less time, for me anyway, than it was to do something like this. So I complicated it was more complicated this than it really needed to be. But, like I say, that's what separates the guys that do it every day and the guys that don't, right? So this will be gone, and I'm going to use his suggestion, or actually he's going to do it. I'll let him take care of that. And, we'll achieve the same goal with less risk, which is what I want. So next time you see me, we should be putting concrete in here. At least that's what I hope anyway. I'm excited, extremely anxious to get this done and over with. But I do believe it was the best call to wait a couple days on pouring this, because the overnight temperatures have been, hovering around mid-20s in the Fahrenheit, which is well below freezing and puts this pad at risk of damage. There's no heat in the building, right? So without pumping in a bunch of heat, adding the extra cost to the job and the extra potential damage, it was just the best call to wait. So next time we talk, I should have some concrete in here, if everything goes smooth anyway. So the way that my contractor explained to me about how he was going to bring concrete in here is to shuttle it in with a powered shuttle, at least to the back third. Take the rebar down off the chairs for the first 3/4 of the shop, bring the concrete in with a powered shuttle, and then set the rebar back up on the chairs as we move forward. And then once we get within the truck's chute range, the concrete chute's range, just dump it in, the standard way. So that's the plan, and it should work out really good. I'm excited to see that happen. So I think that's it. I'm excited. Got to get a roof in here so I can get some heat in here. But then, we got to recover from this and the holidays first. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks to my viewers, patrons, and subscribers. Anybody who supported me on this project, it's much appreciated. And I wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. You're amazing. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
The birds fly south as the light leaves your eyes. Hold on to your dream. Oh, I know you wanna scream. Since the day you're born, you're just a flower.